Trump and Trump supporters are getting a lot of what they've been asking for. Two big stories right now. Companies are definitely leaving China, reports Forbes, and also the U.S. has expelled thousands of migrants under coronavirus public health order. I'm going to stop right there and question whether or not Axios means illegal immigrant or like legal migrant, because the U.S. expelling legal migrants doesn't seem to make as much sense. I'm willing to bet that I'm sorry. That's right. Yes, they say the U.S. expelled more than 6,000 migrants using new powers, enabling the federal government to almost immediately turn back border crossers. Oh, Axios. You meant illegal immigrants. Okay. Anyway, the main story I want to talk to you about is what's going on with these factories leaving China. The point is, there are a lot of Trump supporters who want to act like this is not nearly as bad as it really is or something. I don't know why. I'm not saying all Trump supporters, but there are a few posts I see where they're definitely downplaying this, acting like the numbers are being fluffed up or something. It's strange to me because, for one, it's definitely happening. I mean, look, it might not be happening in the most sensational way the media portrays it as happening, but it is. And you have Trump getting what he wants. Sit back and say, okay, I guess the best thing we can do is support those who are trying to solve this crisis. That includes the president. And one of the ways the president is working to solve it is by enacting things that he wants. But outside of making what he wants to happen, we're seeing people people are doing what he wants. New data shows U.S. companies are definitely leaving China. Forbes reports. Global manufacturing consulting firm Kearney released its 7th annual reshoring index on Tuesday, showing what it called a dramatic reversal of a 5-year trend as domestic U.S. manufacturing in 2019 commanded a significantly greater share versus 14 Asian exporters tracked in the study. Manufacturing imports from China were the hardest hit. Last year saw companies actively rethinking their supply chain, either convincing their Chinese partners to relocate to Southeast Asia to avoid tariffs, or by opting out of sourcing from China altogether. 3 decades ago, U.S. producers began manufacturing and sourcing in China for one reason: costs. The trade war brought a second dimension more fully into the equation: risk, as tariffs and the threat of disrupted China imports prompted companies to weigh surety of supply more fully alongside cost. COVID-19 brings a third dimension more fully into the mix, and arguably to the fore: resilience, the ability to foresee and adapt to unforeseen systemic shocks, says Patrick Van den Bosch, Kearney partner and co-author of the 19-page report. The main beneficiaries of this are the smaller Southeast Asian nations, led by Vietnam. And thanks to the passing of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, Mexico, for all its problems with drug cartels, has become a favorite spot for sourcing. Now, that's not perfect. Not exactly what many nationalists wanted. We want factories coming back to this country. But it is a big factor in Trump's presidency, the trade war with China and bringing our factories back, at least outside of China. In 2020, the trade war seemed to be on pause. Sadly, it gave way to a global pandemic that emanated from the Hubei province in China. This we all know. Once China got up and running, the U.S. was hit between the eyes with the deadly COVID disease caused by the virus. Even if China was fully healed, the U.S. was stuck in sickbay. The full extent of societal and economic trauma the coronavirus pandemic may cause is still unknown. The Kearney report authors wrote, but whatever the outcome, a return to status quo China trade pre-pandemic is unlikely. Not only are companies going to be leaving China, they likely will not be going back. And that's a big thing. That's a huge goal for Donald Trump. So I think we understand the gist of this. As we've seen, there have been tremendous risks due to the fact that our medicines aren't produced in the United States. They're produced overseas. That's a serious hole in our national security. Another big factor for Trump was immigration. So this is the president getting a lot of what he wants. Axios, as I already read, reports the big picture that the federal government is able to turn illegal immigrants around immediately. It's not just illegal immigrants, too. So maybe Axios was being a bit fair. It's also refugees, people coming and trying to claim status. They say the order has drastically lowered the number of immigrants in CBP custody. So, yeah, illegal immigrants, to fewer than 100. The agency's acting commissioner, Mark Morgan, told reporters on Thursday the number of people coming into the U.S. overall has plummeted due to coronavirus-related travel bans in place at both the northern and southern borders. Of the 6,319 migrants expelled under the public health order, 299 were single minors, 393 were family members, and the rest were adults, CBP told Axios. They say between the border crisis last year and the CDC order, border officials had been arresting or turning away an average of 10,000 migrants a week. according to a CBP official. Since March 21st, the agency has averaged 4,200 apprehensions and expulsions per week. The number of attempted border crossings fell by over 2,500 between February and March to 33,937, according to CBP's latest data. This time last year, border numbers began to surge. There were nearly 104,000 attempted border crossings in March 2019. So it seems like they're definitely down for sure. That's a huge number. Although some migrants will be able to seek humanitarian relief, it is ultimately at the discretion of Border Patrol agents, and U.S. public health is the top concern, Morgan said. So this is something, look, it's one factor in an ongoing effort by the president in terms of controlling immigration, securing our borders. Yeah, there's a lot of arguments between the Democrats and Donald Trump over what he should or shouldn't do. But I want to talk a little bit more about like the ultimate politics of where this brings us. For me, I don't know what my plans are moving forward into November, but I can tell you a few things. Bringing the factories back from China is excellent. Whether it's just because of the pandemic, just because of the trade war, the fact is they shouldn't be over there. This has been a long time coming. It's been very, very bad for us for so many different reasons. The extraction of wealth, taking away good paying jobs from American citizens to send to cheap labor overseas where they have very little rights so that money can trickle up to the ultra wealthy. That's something the left should have been calling out for a long time. Instead, it was on Donald Trump to do so. Immigration, for instance, along with Bernie Sanders, many other people. The president has called out the fact that it depresses low-skill wages. Bernie Sanders, for sure, came out and flip-flopped. So let's talk about what the Democrats have offered us versus what Donald Trump has offered us. Donald Trump has delivered on many of his promises. Donald Trump created a task force about dealing with the coronavirus the day he received word from it from, his administration. He restricted travel from China a few days later and then publicly said that it wasn't going to be that bad. I can only conclude that it's more likely he was downplaying it publicly because he didn't want to spark a panic, but he was taking it seriously. Unfortunately, he didn't do enough, and now we're in this mess. The Democrats have offered a whole lot of nothing. They're not getting what they want. They're doing nothing, and they're trying to get nothing. I don't know what they're trying to get. I can look at these stories and say, wow, Donald Trump has got some victories under his belt. These are the things he was trying to get done. What have the Democrats tried to do? Impeach the president? What is that going to do for me or anyone else? Stop the guy who's actually doing things he wants to do? I don't get it. I really don't understand what your goal is in this. There was a big breaking story the other day. It's very, very complicated and hard to break down. But for the most part, we are now learning that in the investigation from the Democrats, the Horowitz report shows that the FBI knew before they started this crossfire hurricane that some of the information they had was literally Russian intelligence disinformation, and they ran with it anyway. So what have the Democrats gotten for us by pushing that forward? A massive waste of our time, a sham investigation. And so here I am sitting here questioning about who I should vote for. I see a lot of people on social media. For some reason, there are a lot of people, everybody seems to have like a weird view. I don't know. They make assumptions about who you are, especially people who don't watch all of my content. They're saying things like, I would never, or I am a Democrat or something like that. It's like a month or so ago, I said I was completely done with the Democratic Party. Yet for some reason, there are people who still maintain, these Trump supporters, that Tim Pool is a Democrat or something. No, look, man. I can't tell you how many times I've ragged on them. And the problem I have is that for the longest time, I was saying, why don't you do something? Why don't you do something beyond investigate, beyond complain? They don't. The biggest thing I have is media criticism, and the media lies about the president all the time. So yes, I'm going to call him out. But I think it's fair to point out that you don't have to like the president's policies to recognize the Democrats aren't doing anything. Look, I can see Trump winning on the things he wants to win on. That's a fact. The facts aren't always going to be on the side of Trump supporters, but for now they tend to be because the media and the Democrats are trapped in this parallel universe where they're screeching and doing nothing. They accused Trump of colluding with Russians. That was fake news. Of trying to, get Joe Biden, spying on Joe Biden or using Ukraine. That was also fake news. We're getting nothing from the Democrats. I'm sorry. I tried looking up what's their current plan on healthcare. One of the criticisms I've seen is that the Republicans have no healthcare plan. Guess what? I couldn't find anything. I'm not kidding. The media doesn't talk about it. Maybe that's more media criticism. Maybe that's the bigger issue. The media won't talk about what they're doing. I think it's actually more fair to say that the Democrats aren't doing anything. You can tell me that you like what Trump is doing or dislike it. I think our factories should come back, so that's credit for Trump. I think what he did crossing the DMZ in North Korea, it's one of the things I'll always praise him for. That was bold and brave, and I think it was symbolic. When it comes to traditional Republican positions, deregulating environmental protections is a bad thing. Foreign policy moves have been general bad things. Not the worst, but still generally bad. And there's other issues pertaining to like life and choice that make it difficult to support for me, right? I don't know if there's a viable alternative to the guy. And what's worrying to me is, and I'll give the shout out again to Joe Rogan, I've mentioned several times on this, when he said he'd rather have Trump than Biden, he's right. Trump can be pro-life, he can be whatever these cultural issues are, but Trump can think straight and Biden can't. And I actually have a real fear of a Biden presidency. You can complain the president is a bad person, I get it, but he's not going to, fall asleep at the wheel and crash the ship like Joe Biden would. So let me wrap these together. The point I'm trying to make is, I'm seeing these stories that just show, once again, Trump is getting these victories and these things are happening. And I look to the stories about Democrats and they're constantly losing and they're constantly wrong. At a certain point, you can accept that maybe your policy positions will never be endorsed by someone who can actually win, and you walk away from the Democratic Party because they're losers. Or maybe you're a Trump supporter and you agree with what he's doing and you're constantly winning. Yeah. People try to blame Trump for this pandemic. It's not his fault. As if that's a policy position. It wasn't. So I don't know what this means, but the reason I'm saying this is because there are a lot of people who, throw shade at me, don't know exactly what I'm all about or whatever. Fine. It's fine. Whatever. I don't know. I'm not perfect. Information changes. I'll leave it there. We'll see how things play out. I have no problem saying, how I feel, and what I'm saying is currently how I feel. So I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.